You're alone in an elevator at work. It comes to a sudden, unexpected stop. The lights flicker off. When they come back on, you are surrounded by tall, strange beings. You need my help. This is A Voice from Darkness. Hello. As always, this is Dr. Malcolm Ryder, parapsychologist. I apologize for the long break after our last episode, right after coming back from a hiatus, no less. But our studio has received an avalanche of calls, emails, and tweets asking for me to respond to wild theories regarding my involvement in two long-past missing persons cases. Miranda and Julian Holloway, siblings. I will not dignify these rumors by responding on the show. Later, we will be taking calls. However, we will be screening them first to make sure no one is simply trying to get on air to shout out their internet conspiracy theories about, well, myself. If that is your intention, please do not bother. We have no interest in airing your call. Okay, first, it's time for National Alerts. National Alerts. A dangerous text-adventure computer game from the 80s has found its way onto the internet. Titled The Decadence of Farbotia. Do not download the game. Do not play it. Every copy should have been destroyed in 1985 when dozens of players disappeared. It's unclear how it got online, but it's there. At the Ravenswood Library, there was an incomplete walkthrough of the game. I don't recall all that many specific details, but the player begins the game as a pauper traveling across the ruined kingdom of Farbotia, collecting objects belonging to the aristocracy so that they will grant you access into their hidden sanctum, while the rest of the kingdom falls apart. The players who disappeared in '85 are believed to have finished the game, as all their computer screens showed the same final scene. Pixel art of a luxurious room in a state of decay. Misshapen creatures in golden masks surround the player's character, who appears frightened by these figures. I repeat, do not search for or play The Decadence of Farbotia. That is our only national alert this week. Do you have a supernatural question but don't want to call into the show? Maybe you're merely curious about a matter, like a small, intense red light that manifests above your bed as you try to fall asleep. No, actually, that's dangerous. That's a bad example. If you're ever experiencing that, please do call into the show right away. But if you have a question you're merely curious about and would prefer to write into the show, feel free to email us at avoicefromdarkness@gmail.com, all one word, or tweet us at VFDarkness. On that note, from Twitter, Phil asks us, Dr. Ryder, what was your first supernatural encounter? Well, that's kind of you to ask, Phil. The Ryder family has been adjacent to the supernatural for several generations. My grandfather, Duncan Ryder, like my sister now, was a professor of occult studies. I suppose many grandparents like to perform magic tricks for their grandchildren, pull coins from behind their ears and other simple sleights. My grandfather, perhaps took it a bit too far. One night, when I was 7 years old, he led me to his study to show me a black-bladed knife. At that point in my life, I'd been told about the supernatural, but was never a witness to it. He turned on a bright desk lamp that cast his shadow across the floor and against the wall. With black blade in hand and without warning, he bent down and severed his shadow from his body. His dark silhouette then moved about the room on its own, threw books from shelves, knocked over furniture. All the while, my grandfather and I laughed. Then, without warning, his shadow drifted towards me with its hands outstretched. My grandfather stopped laughing. I backed away, frightened. My grandfather whispered something under his breath and reached out a hand towards his shadow, but his shadow ignored him. As I crept back, its fingers grew longer and sharper till they took up a large portion of the room. I found myself trapped in a corner. The shadow now hardly resembled the man it had been cast from. It was thin and long, with talons. I looked towards my grandfather for help. "That's enough now," he threatened, but the shadow continued on its course. The dark mockery of my grandfather raised its talons into the air to strike me. My grandfather lunged at his desk lamp. He missed the pull chain but knocked the lamp off the desk. The light bulb burst and the room fell into darkness. I woke up in the guest room late the next afternoon. I asked my grandfather about his shadow, about the black blade, but he feigned ignorance. His body cast a shadow again, a normal one that resembled him and only moved when he did. He suggested I must have dreamed the whole incident. Only later that day I snuck into his study. The books were all back where they'd been before the shadow had thrown them. The furniture, too. No broken light bulb shards were scattered across the floor. But the light bulb in the desk lamp was different. A different size and wattage than it had been. It had been replaced. Years later, I again asked my grandfather about the black-bladed knife. He did not deny the reality of the incident. He apologized for what had happened years before and for lying. I asked him what happened to the knife. He refused to tell me. When he died, he made no mention of it in his will. It was, in all likelihood, one of the more dangerous talismans in his collection. And there's no accounting for it. Well, Phil, that was my first encounter with the supernatural. I hope that satisfied your curiosity. Our next question comes to us from Eli. They write, "Dr. Ryder, I keep having intense dreams of a tower rising through mist in the northeast. As it rises, an island in a lake disappears, and then everything everywhere goes dark. I think I'm dreaming of the end of the world. Am I?" Well, Eli, I've met dozens of people over my career who've claimed to predict the future from their dreams. I believe dreams are powerful. We'll see an example of that shortly in Today in Odd America. But I've yet to see a demonstrable case where a dreamer predicted a specific future event. I wouldn't let your dreams worry you too much. That's all the questions we have this week. Onward to Today in Odd America. Today in Odd America, we find ourselves on board the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt, or the Swanky Frankie, as some sailors called her. The ship's location, Yankee Station, off the coast of Vietnam. The year, 1967. Our story involves two sailors who worked the night watch, a second-class culinary specialist by the name of Rogers and a third-class hospital corpsman named Quincy. Rogers ran the aft mess deck from the late dinner to breakfast. Quincy stood watch in medical overnight. But both would take a smoke break around 0200 hours. The smoke deck could be a lonely place at that hour, Frequently, it was only Rogers and Quincy out there at that time. Over weeks and then months of meeting, they became friends. As they'd smoke, they'd talk about what they missed back home, girls mostly, complain about their chains of command. They had these conversations nearly every watch. But one night, Quincy met Rogers and something was wrong. His eyes stared out into the water. He was quiet and didn't respond to anything Rogers said. Rogers dismissed it. Probably didn't sleep well, that's all, Rogers thought. Quincy was no better the night after. If anything, worse. Rogers asked him what was wrong. "A dream I had," Quincy said. He wouldn't elaborate further. The next night, Quincy met Rogers on the smoke deck in his dress blues. There was no reason to wear that uniform out to sea unless you're going to captain's mast. Rogers asked Quincy if he was in trouble. "None at all," he said. His eyes were glazed over, his voice monotone. "In fact, tonight is a night to celebrate." Rogers asked him what for. "For the past few nights I've talked to this woman," Quincy said. "She's beautiful, the most beautiful woman I've ever met, and she loves me, and I love her." "We're out to sea," Rogers said. "There are no women within miles of the ship." "You're wrong," Quincy said. "She follows us beneath the water. She has the most beautiful yellow eyes, almost luminescent." "Quincy, you're sounding crazy," Rogers said. "She's perfect, Rogers, in every way. She said she heard me when I dreamed, heard my thoughts, heard my memories, everything about me, and she loves me, everything about me, Rogers. In my dreams, I've spent years with her already. It's time I go to her." He walked closer to the side of the ship. "Don't go doing what you're thinking of doing," Rogers said, and crept behind his friend, afraid to make a sudden move. "Come with me," Quincy said, and offered his hand. "I'm sure there are others like her beneath the water. Some of them will hear your thoughts and dreams and think you're perfect too. Wouldn't that be so much better than all this?" Rogers clutched Quincy's hand and pulled him away from the side of the ship, tried to put him in a bear hug. He screamed, "Help on the smoke deck! I need help on the smoke deck!" But while some of Rogers's focus was on getting help, Quincy's sole effort was to escape his grip. And he succeeded. He jumped. Rogers called man overboard, but before he did, he looked out into the water. For a moment, just a moment, he thought he saw shining yellow eyes in the water, staring up at him. But they disappeared. A search and rescue operation launched. Quincy's body was not recovered. Rogers told his chain of command what Quincy had said, told anyone who'd listen. Rogers was flown off the ship and sent to Shoreside Medical. Ship doctors dismissed his rantings of yellow eyes in the water and his recounting of Quincy's story as grief, or perhaps a psychotic break. But after Rogers left the Roosevelt, 8 more sailors leapt overboard, their bodies never to be found. Files on the overboard deaths the Roosevelt experienced remain classified to this day. And now, back to our main show. All right, we're back, and we have a caller on the line. Hello, caller. Why don't you tell us your name and what supernatural problem you're facing?
I'm Danielle, and my wallpaper, There's something off about it.
Danielle, I believe you've called into the wrong show.
No, I haven't. Sorry, let me explain. I buy and flip houses. No, I mean, that's not true. I'm an accountant. I don't make that much money. Maybe I'm not a very good accountant. But I watch a lot of HGTV, shows where people buy and flip houses, and I thought, hey, I could do that. That looks exciting and fun and profitable. So I bought a fixer-upper, sight unseen, and then I went to it, and now I've seen it. There's this intense wallpaper pattern that's in every room.
Yes, I see. I don't think you meant to call into my show.
There's a man in the wallpaper. In the Paisley pattern. The wallpaper in every room is Paisley.
Go on.
I got the keys to the house a few days ago and have been coming by after work. The first night, a lot of the lights were broken and I couldn't see the interior at all. Or the interior all that well. The next night, I came with new light bulbs, and that's when I found out there's Paisley wallpaper everywhere. Someone must have really loved that pattern. That second night, after I put a bulb in the master bedroom, there was something different about the Paisley design in that room. Underneath the, teardrop, the main part of the pattern, whatever that is.
A cypress tree.
I'm sorry?
The primary recurring image in Paisley is a cypress tree.
I thought you said I called into the wrong show.
Well, Paisley has occult connotations, not unlike the pyramid with the eye on the back of $1 bills. But please, go on with your story.
Well, in the master bedroom's wallpaper pattern, there was a man next to all the cypress trees that repeated throughout the room. I'd never seen that design before. Not that I've ever really taken the time to examine Paisley patterns, but something about it wasn't right. The man, I guess he was leaning against the cypress tree?
The man who stands in the shade of the cypress tree.
That's what people call him? The man in my wallpaper?
He has different names in different cultures, but that's the most common. Please, continue.
The man, he was just simple lines. But, not a lot of detail, like the rest of the pattern in that room. The man's face, it moved so slowly. I thought I was imagining it, a visual trick of some kind. But his face turned toward me, and he blinked. The light bulb broke, the room went dark, I put a new bulb in, and after I did, the pattern had changed. There was no longer a man standing next to the cypress tree. I ran out of the room, ran out of the house, and I've been afraid to go back since.
Well, I'm sure I'd be frightened too, if that happened to me.
What is he? The man who stands in the shade of the cypress tree? Is he a demon or spirit or something?
Danielle, do you know where the Paisley design comes from?
Jane Austen times? It feels like a pattern Mr. Darcy would have in Pemberley.
Oh, far older than that. And Persian. The cypress tree design comes from the Zoroastrians. The origin of the man who stands in shade is less clear. Strangely, despite the Zoroastrian roots of the cypress tree, the Abrahamic faiths offer the most popular explanation for the man in the shade. Apocryphal Gnostic texts claim a son of Cain snuck back into the Garden of Eden to eat from the tree of life, which granted immortality. For attempting this, God cursed Cain's son to forever stand beneath the tree, a cypress tree. And so to this day, he remains.
Even if that were true, why would he be in my wallpaper?
Okay, well, brace yourself. Mystics, warlocks, magicians of all types have used the Paisley pattern as part of rituals to channel him, mostly in attempts to gain everlasting life. I imagine the previous owner of your house was doing just such a thing. Do you know what happened to them?
No, they disappeared and the house was foreclosed. The ritual they had to do to summon the man in the shade. Is it hard?
Extraordinarily so.
So that means my wallpaper is valuable?
That's not a question that is even relevant. We need to destroy all the Paisley in your house to unlink the man in the shade from there. Now, I know
No, I'm not letting you help me.
You called into this show looking for my help.
No, I mean, not that kind of help. I don't want you sending creepy spiders to me or whatever you did to the last person who called into the show.
Well, that was a special circumstance, and in this case, nothing like that is even...
I don't trust you. I don't want you coming to my house, or sending anything to me that might hurt me. And besides, maybe I should get a second opinion. See if some other supernatural person thinks maybe the wallpaper might be worth something. I mean, I bought this place to make money.
Danielle, you cannot... Danielle, if you're still listening, I'd advise against doing whatever you're thinking of doing. If you put out an ad on Craigslist or anything on the internet claiming you have a connection to the man who stands in the shade, you will bring the wrong sort of person to your door. Those who seek immortality are willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to get it. Please feel free to call me back if you want the situation handled properly. I promise you'll come to no harm. I'm here to help. That's all the time we have for our show this evening. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at VFDarkness with any otherworldly questions you have, or call in next time on Voice from Darkness.
Thank you for listening to A Voice from Darkness. That was Kristin Holland as Malcolm Ryder and Bonnie Bogovich as Danielle. Kristin comes to us courtesy of the Nocturnal Transmissions short horror story podcast. If you'd like to hear more of his work, search for Nocturnal Transmissions wherever good podcasts are purveyed. It seems callers are losing trust in Dr. Ryder, starting to ask questions. Perhaps some of those questions will be answered next time on A Voice from Darkness. I'm Jac Rhys. Thank you again for listening.